Welcome to the UGC EPG Pathshala lecture series in computer science. In this series of lectures, we have been looking at the paper software engineering. For this session, I will be addressing with the continuation of white box testing. So, we understand and go with the same objectives that we have listed in the previous session. In the previous session, I was discussing about cyclomatic complexity. The complexity with the help of graphs was indicated till the last session. Now that I am going for a slightly higher next level of programming. So, if at all a program has one or more loops associated, how will it be? Say in this particular case, I have got a loop if and I have got a do while and again a loop called if then. In such case, initially I will try converting this statement into a graph rather than drawing a flow chart as a basic reason. So, if expression then statement 2, if expression 1 then statement 2, we will reach n3 and I execute a do while here and after that I execute a if then here also. So, which means I am taking an input from an external source, I am flowing through an if then which is at n1, n2, n3 and I am executing my do while at n3, n4 and n5 and as a basic reason of if then again I will be doing my n5, n6 and n7. So, how do we compute the number of paths? So, independent paths associated with this particular graph are say path P1, let us take only one path for now for a discussion. So, for P1 we will traverse through the edges, isn't it? So, in this particular case I consider E1, E2, E4, E6, E7, E8 which is one of the paths which has a start to the end. So, this is one of the path which has a clear start and a clear end. Likewise, we have a loop here. So, I may have to ensure that every path has been traversed through at least once. So, by that in mind or with that in mind, I am trying to generate as many paths as possible, thereby I could generate 8 different independent paths. And if you look at all the independent paths, this need not be equal. So, they are of various size where P represents the paths, E represents the edges and N represents the node. If you look for these independent paths, this portion of the slide indicates where the connection exists, which means when the connection exists it says it is 1 and when the connection does not exist it has been represented with 0. So, since I have traversed through E1, E2 once I have the connection establishment, so I represented with binary value 1. Since I do not traverse or I have not gone through an edge called E3 that has been replaced with 0, E4 again I have got 1, E5 I have not traversed through, so then it becomes 0, E6, E7, E8 exist, so E9 and E10 does not exist. Whereas, when you look at the second path which is P2, it traverses through E1, E2, E4, I check for a condition do which is E5, again I flow through E4, then go for E6, E7, E8 which means with the existence of all the edges I am representing it again by ones and zeros, but in this particular case I have traversed through this edge E4 twice. So, that is the reason why I am indicating E4 with a number 2. Likewise, for all the independent paths that I have presented, I am trying to convert those independent paths with an edge value. If you look at all the 8 different paths and specifically if you look at path P3 and P4, although the traversal has been different, say we have started with E3, E4, E6, E7, E8 that is one path, or otherwise we have started with a do statement which starts with E6, E7, E8, E10 which is a virtual path and E3, E4 again, which means both are executed with the same list of activities. So, in this particular case, when you go back and check for the condition is to test at least once, which means I should have tested with all the independent paths at least once. So, I can execute either P3 or P4. But then if you also look at, this has a different start, it started with E3 and this started with E6. On a worst case, we may also check for P3 and P4, but for best case understanding, it is effective to say you can test any one of P3 and P4. So, with the same graph, with the same statements and the same graph, with the list of all the values represented in the previous thing, now I can also understand the number of cycles. In the previous case, we were able to identify the number of paths. If you look at, if at all you wanted to compute the complexity with the decisions, that means decisions are clearly made with a predicate node. So, N1 is supposed to be a predicate node, N4 is a predicate node, N5 is a predicate node. I see 3 predicate nodes here. So, the cyclomatic complexity of this particular graph should be 4, whereas at the same time I also try to understand the number of cycles associated with this particular graph. So, how many different cycles exist? So, where are the cycles, or what are the paths which represent cycles? So, P3 is one path, P5 is another path, P6 another path, P7 is other path. Of all the independent paths, only 4 of the paths are representing cycles, whereas P4, P8 and P9 are not said to be cyclic paths. So, with this we are going for a modified complexity measure by introducing a value called P. Given P, connected components of a graph, the cyclomatic complexity is represented or rewritten as E minus n plus 2p, or in case of a linearly independent graph, the cyclomatic complexity of a linearly independent graph is represented with E minus n plus p plus 1, where this Li represents the linearly independent value, and we try to compute the cyclomatic complexity of this graph. So, the cyclomatic complexity of a graph which is linearly independent does not change when the program is modularized into p different modules. So, there will be no difference between the first formulae and the second formulae. So, how do we compute the cyclomatic complexity measures? If you look at this particular case, V is equal to n minus plus 2, where we have one loop if then else statement executing here, we have another if then else which has been executing here. If you understand on the number of edges, which is 12 in this particular case, number of nodes is 11 plus 2, it is the complexity is 3. If at all we wanted to compute the linearly independent complexity of this particular graph, it will be E minus n plus p plus 1. So, that means this modules will also not be taken into account. So, it is again 12 minus 11 plus 1 plus 1, which is 3. But then this can also be replaced something like this. So, I can, this is something similar to the flow chart that we tend to draw. I am replacing this n3, n4, n5 and n6 with a value called n9, which is somewhere outside the loop, and this n9 is supposed to call a function or call a module. So, which module is again the module that has been taken out from this program. So, this also will understand, but the complexity of this kind of a program will certainly increase. So, if you consider this particular case, the number of nodes is 10, number of edges is also 10 plus 2 into number of p is 2, which is 4, whereas in case of linearly independent it will be only 3. So, we get an intuitive expectation that modularizing a program, will it increase the complexity? So, that is a debatable one, where in this particular case we should not modularize it into smaller fragments, but then modularization is basically being carried out to reduce the quantum of complexity, but at certain times for simple or for very simple programs, if you consider multiple volumes of modules, then the complexity level also tries to increase. So, this is the understanding that we get out of cyclomatic complexity, where as the industry study gives us a number which indicates higher the quantum of cyclomatic complexity value for a particular graph, higher will be the probability of errors. So, after I get the highest values for some modules, so following are the modules where I can get more errors. So, this is the indication or the study which has been carried out. So, we understand that the cyclomatic complexity depends on the probability of errors again. So, we will continue with explaining on the various coverages that we tend to do. So, although we have looked at a specific example, it is our duty to present to you on the statement coverage, branch coverage and other loops. So, with regard to statement coverage requires that each statement will have to be executed at least once. So, we have looked it into the graph where we understand that every statement is being executed at least once, and this is supposed to be the simplest form of the logic coverage. So, whenever we have understood all the independent parts, all the statements at least once, we understand the logic is being done. So, this is also known as node coverage, where the minimum number of test cases required to achieve the statement coverage for the program is this way. Assume we have got a graph something like this, the total number of independent parts by just looking at the number of decisions. We have got 3 decisions. So, number of simple decisions plus 1, we generate the complexity of the graph as 4. So, there should be 4 independent parts. So, the 4 independent parts can be generated out of the given control flow graph, and finally, we are supposed to derive test cases to exercise these independent parts. That means, every independent parts need to be tested with a definitive set of test cases. So, what is this complexity? Here I am trying to explain it using an enclosed area. How many enclosed area we have for this particular graph is, this is one enclosed area, this will be another enclosed area. So, the graph complexity with respect to or with regard to the enclosed area will be, I have got 2 enclosed areas plus 1 or number of simple decisions plus 1. So, I have got 2 decisions to be done here, 2 decisions plus 1 which will be 3. In terms of enclosed area, I have got 2 enclosed areas plus 1 which is again 3. So, converting the statement into a graph will fetch us the cyclomatic complexity. By looking at the cyclomatic complexity, we can compute the number of independent parts associated. By looking at the number of independent parts, that gives us the intention of how many different parts basically need to be tested or preliminarily we have to test, and if at all the cyclomatic complexity increases, higher will be the increase in the complexity, higher will be the probability of errors. So, this is again to give you another representation of the statement coverage, where converting every line of code into a representation of either node and edges. After having done statement, we may have to now do a branch coverage. This branch will have been traversed, and that every program entry point will have to be taken at least once. That means, branch is created when there is 2 edges emerging out of a single node, and this is called edge coverage. So, this branch coverage is also called as edge coverage. Why is the point that every program has an entry point which will have been taken at least once? So, with that as a question, if we start, if you have a sequential statement like this, it has an entry, it goes through this particular node, it has edges, that will be checked, whereas there can be inputs from multiple sources, and every time, although the input is different, I will get the same output, but then I should have tested this loop, or this traversal should have been, or this path should have been traversed through minimally one time, and I have the second path which has to be traversed at least one time. So, we understand the importance of branch coverage rather than sequential coverage, sequential statement coverage. So, are there any relationship that is existing between the branch and the statement? So, possibly looking at the relations, there seems to be no relations, but then if you look at the statement coverage subsumes branch coverage, which is either it is equal or greater than the branch, whereas if you look at branch coverage subsumes statement coverage at some times where branch will tend to statements. So, if you look for the loops that we have used, if it is an if loop or do loop, then in that particular case branches subsume the statement, whereas in case of normal programming, statement gives a branch. So, this is something to give you an example of where statement takes you to a branch. So, minimum number of cases required for statement coverage and minimum number of cases required for branch coverage is what we have to study. Normally for statement taking us to a branch, this will be the constraint where we have got statements which has been considered to go in for a branch. If you have a program which has dead code, that means code which are not accessible, which are not unreachable, then the statement coverage is possibly not be able to achieve. Whereas at the bottom line, we will always assume the nominal case of a no dead code. So, there is no code that seems to be unachievable or unreachable. We will every testing engineer will assume that there is no dead code which is associated with the program, and we can substantially look at every line of a code when they are doing their testing. So, unless explicitly stated otherwise, under this particular assumption, branch coverage does indeed subsume statement coverage. Now that we have looked at two different coverages, one is statement coverage, the second one as a branch coverage. Also we may have to look at the condition of the looping statements. So, the branching predicate may have more than one condition. In case if I have got an if which checks for the condition of a particular integer which is less than 0 and a particular integer which is equal to 0, then I may have to execute this. If at all I am to check for the condition, condition coverage requires that each condition will have to be tested for a true value. Not only for the true value, it also have to be checked for the false value also, but both of these should be executed at least once. So, after having understood on the condition coverage, we can now correlate this condition coverage with the branch coverage. Has there been any relationship between condition coverage and branch coverage? If you look for the test cases for a particular statement which has been executed like this, if A or B, then execute a statement 1, else execute statement 2, and if then else. So, for a test condition 1, if A is presumably true, then the branch is true, and for condition 2 both the statements say as false, then the branch coverage need not be done. As we have indicated in the objective of white box testing, we may have to carry out statement coverage individually for every path we flow through. We also have to go through branch coverage, and we have also looked at condition coverage, and there are times wherein we look for both branches and conditions together. So, here is a condition where we look for both branch and condition coverage, which requires both the branch operation and the condition operation to be performed in parallel. So, therefore, branch and condition coverage subsumes both branch coverage and condition coverage. So, as a overall statement, to cover on the white box relationship, we have looked at initially the paths as basis path and loops. From the basis path we have arrived at state branches, and we have also looked at compound conditions. Through compound conditions, which means we are including branch and conditions, this branch and condition, or from the branch we generally derive statements. From this, we also try to understand the various strategies which are associated with the testing. We also have many unanswered questions about white box and black box testing. The fundamental question that we tend to ask is, who does all the component of testing, or which technique should we use and when it is supposed to be used. So, these are the very preliminary questions that need to be answered. So, there is no universal strategy, it is all just by principles that we understand its usefulness in practice. So, we follow a notion called unit testing and integration testing, and as part of unit and integration testing we both tend to do white box and black box testing techniques. So, some of the basic principles that are associated with the testing are: testing should start at the component level and it should work outwards. So, outwards in turn means it goes to the unit testing level, integration testing level, system testing, acceptance testing, and so. And all of these different testing strategies are appropriate with different scopes. So, these tests are conducted by both developers and also by a specialized group of test engineers, and this testing is purely different from debugging, where debugging is the entire follow up that we do after testing. As we have indicated on the various strategies of component level, starting from the unit, integration, system and acceptance, we understand the focus, we tend to understand the focus and scope of each and every testing strategies. If you look at unit testing, the scope is to test on the individual component and the focus is given to the component which needs to ensure on the correctness property. So, if at all you ask what and all the kind of testing that we may have to perform, we may have to do a technique of both black box and white box, whereas if you look for the integration testing, the scope is getting restricted, where we frame a set of interacting components. So, we merge one or more components, only then we will be able to do an integration testing. So, the focus here is to again check for the correctness of component interactions. So, where this component is trying to interact, only that particular place we will be focusing more. So, here we will be testing mostly on the black box and we will be employing few of the white box techniques, whereas with this case of system testing, the scope is to test on the entire system and the focus is given purely for the overall system correctness. So, if at all I am to do a system test, it is purely an black box testing strategy that I will be doing, because system test is to test only on the functionality, whereas unit and integration purely done with white box testing or black box and a combination of white box testings, where I also check for the functionality. Rather than the functionality, I go in depth on the programming internals, where tend to study on the structure of the programming also. Here we will try to understand which is to be tested first. So, test first programming are the modern practices which emphasizes on the importance of testing during development. So, the basic idea of test first programming is to give you an intention of, before you start writing any code, first write the test cases of this particular code. That means, once after understanding the functionality which is provided in the program, we can generate test cases. Then after writing the code, we may also create, or rather putting it in another format, once after understanding the functionality of the program or the functionality of the project, we will be able to write test cases which is supposed to be said expected outcome, whereas after having flown through white box testing with different strategies, I will be matching with the expected outcomes as desired outputs. So, we write a little test code which will in turn write the corresponding unit test, makes it sure to pass these tests, and then we tend to repeat the same testing strategies for multiple components. We also have to look at the various programming methodologies that are used for this approach, and finally we may have to test for the advantage of this programming. So, to look at the advantages of test first programming, developers should not skip the unit test. So, unit test is a test that has been performed at the component level. Every statement or branch or condition has to be tested at least once. So, we should never skip this unit testing that is being done at the development side. So, developer will also carry out this unit testing. So, satisfying the programmer, we feel the accomplishment of the test passes through this unit level, and the same has been approved by the test engineer by himself. This helps us to clarify the interface and behavior before we understand the complete of programming. So, we tend to write tests for something else, for which first we may have to understand the programming practices and the behavior and the interconnections or the interfaces associated. So, which is supposed to be the software evolution. After changing the existing code, we also try to rerun the tests with utmost confidence. So, which is supposed to be called a regression testing, which we will look at it in detail. So, the various traditional testing strategies that we would follow, if at all we are given with an initial component level, we will go for a context for traditional testing. We will understand the context for traditional testing. We will do a unit test where we will be studying on the basic strategy for unit test. We will do an integration test. We will also further tend to do a system, stress and regression testing. After having passed through all these levels of testing, it will be given to the user for itself to be accepted by the stakeholders. So, once the stakeholders are very clear about the entire programming practices and the requirements getting solved, it is put forth for operation. In short, in this particular session, we have started explaining about the basis path testing strategy. Thereby, we were able to compute the cyclomatic complexity over three means. One is after generating a graph, we were able to compute the cyclomatic complexity of a particular graph with edges and nodes, which is E minus n plus 2. With the help of decisions, it is number of simple decisions plus 1, and with the help of loops, enclosed loops, it is number of loops plus 1. Further, we have also tried understanding on the various traditional testing strategies like unit test, integration test, system test, and we have also understood on the various scope and focus of doing these kind of test cases. When we understood on the scope of these three testing, it is further understood that to what as a testing technique we may have to apply, whether it is black box or white box, which we may have to apply at unit, integration and system testing level. Thank you.